Boom, 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 boom. A side, B side. What side are you on?
Welcome back. It's another episode of A Side, B Side. What's going on, Adam?
Not too much. How are you, Brooke?
Well, physically, I'm fine. I don't want to dive too deep into it because my emotional range goes from pissed off to crying. But since it is in your city,
Yeah.
we can't not address what just happened to
No, and there's no. You're saying the emotional reaction is kind of roller coaster. I feel like the entire area up here has been doing that on a daily basis between the complete shock. It and senselessness of everything.
in the midst of a trial.
Right.
Of a
it's
police
just like,
officer killing a black man. A black man is killed by a police officer.
It is, unfortunately, that happens on a nearly daily basis, it feels like. But the fact that they are within miles of each other, at the completely on the timing is just, it feels like made up almost. It seems surreal. I mean, the entire thing for the last year has felt surreal. Yeah, there are still curfews tonight in certain suburbs, Brooklyn Park and Brooklyn Center. I just got a alert on one of the accounts I follow on Twitter with live video that folks are out there tonight, and the police are in riot gear again, and it's a powder keg. It's been a very surreal, discouraging, upsetting, sickening year, but the last few days have been just even worse. It defies imagination.
It does look like Kim Potter, the officer responsible for Dante Wright's death, has been charged with manslaughter. She did resign, as did the chief of police there, correct?
Yes, and the city manager was also fired by the mayor, I believe on Monday, for not asking for their resignations. Is the rumor? The state has gone full military response, and it really, I think we can update. And this isn't to be flippant, but it's become a psychological question or a philosophical question on par with the chicken or the egg. I mean, do people react violently because is it the riot, people being called rioters, or is it the riot gear when they both, which is the one that's causing the moment? Because there are National Guardsmen. I have a friend who lives in downtown Minneapolis, miles away from where anything has happened, really. And today at like 9 a.m., they're National Guardsmen with M16 standing on a street corner, just full uniform with machine guns in the middle of, a city where nothing's going on. And this has become a normal visual for us. It's not a good look. And it's very disappointing that people all over the country are seeing some of the worst moments of Minnesota.
It is, days after we got the story of the lieutenant who was pepper sprayed for driving a new vehicle. He did nothing, literally nothing wrong, but drive a vehicle in uniform. It is exhausting. And I know it is something that you personally can't understand, even if you wanted to. And I'm sorry, I did not intend to get emotional, but the best thing you can do as a white male is speak up if you see something. It is exhausting being a female and being a Black female, because not only do I have to worry about men, but now literally, and I'm in a town where I know several officers and I trust them and I love them, but they're not every officer.
And it's ridiculous for me to talk about being exhausted when I have dealt with 1/1,000,000th in my life, or 0 of the stress that comes with just not being a white person. So I certainly, the when I talk about exhaustion, I don't mean to equate
I know
in any way, shape, or form.
I'm just saying the best thing you can do. So many people see something and don't say anything. Say something. Say something.
Not that there are many bright spots in a trial that, like the Derek Chauvin trial has been, but one tiny moment that has been really, if not encouraging, at least gives you some hope, is how many people did. Either they recorded or the witnesses that are testifying now, and it's, you can see how the pain and this is not an easy thing to do, but how many people have come forward and continue to say something and want the truth and the story to be told. If people hadn't pulled out their phones when George Floyd was on the ground with a knee to his neck, then we may never have known.
I feel like manslaughter charges, probably not. I mean, it's so double-edged because it should be murder, but I honestly didn't expect manslaughter charges. So
it took how long to get any sort of charges in the George Floyd case.
Right.
There still have really been no charges in Breonna Taylor's. The only charges have been against her boyfriend for discharging his weapon in self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be, the bar shouldn't be so low that we are surprised that someone's been charged this quickly.
Yeah. But
that's unfortunately where we are.
Sorry to start off on such a note, but you can't not address it. And especially with you living there and being there, you know, and seeing firsthand so closely what's happening. And I look at Dante, who was only 20, and I have a 21-year-old and a 23-year-old, and he looked like a baby. Mm-hmm. He looked like a baby. And
I mean, the first day I got my driver's license, I went out, I picked some friends up, we went to a gas station, and I bought one of those stupid Christmas trees to put on the car mirror.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things I did, without fear for a second that I would get in trouble for it, other than I stunk up the entire car and had to tell my parents that everything, like why that car smelled like I had an entire can of pine sol dumped. Evidently, you're only supposed to open the bag a little bit and then like slowly open it. We just took the whole bag out, and it was like 90 degrees on a July day. We had the windows up. Yeah. I don't think there was anything illegal in that smell. We sure smelled bad. But I mean, that's the first thing. When I was a kid, I was like, oh, hey, let's get one of these car freshener things. It was such an innocent moment. And I never had to worry that, I could get pulled over for this.
Right.
Never even crossed my mind.
Yeah. Well, she has been charged. It is a start. I have never been a police officer. I have been in the military. I do know they keep those things on opposite sides for a reason. A training officer and making an accident like that, no.
It's an accident that can't happen. I mean, you don't hear about a train conductor like hitting the wrong pedal on a train, or like a pilot deciding to go down instead of up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not something that should even be in the realm of a possibility. Like you said, they put them on two different sides.
The doctor doesn't.
I mean, because
the doctor doesn't cut the heart instead of a lung. They're on two different sides. And you know what I'm saying. I mean, lungs, you got two, one on each side, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, like when you get knee surgery, I was in the room when my father-in-law at the time was about to go into knee surgery, and he had a big X on his knee with a marker. They put an X on the right knee to make sure they went in on the right. Like, there are fail safes.
Yeah.
There should be.
Yeah. Anyway, like I said, it's a low bar, but at least it's something. She's been charged, and I hope this Derek Chauvin trial goes as it should, because Minneapolis is already about to explode. And not just Minneapolis, this country.
I mean, and the instructions from the judge in the Chauvin trial on Monday to the jurors as they were leaving was, don't talk to anybody and don't read the news, because they're not supposed to even they're not supposed to be watching. So they may not even know this happened. Mm-hmm. Which just the absurdity of that moment.
Well, on that note, how do you feel about starting first?
I'm actually excited to start first, because this my topic tonight goes all the way back to my childhood, and I have a lot of personal connection to, and I think is a lot more impactful than even maybe I remembered as I dove into it. And so I get to get real nostalgic and tell old stories about a cool entertainment thing. And for a moment, maybe just kind of step away from reality, as entertainment is designed to help us do.
All right. Oh, real fast. Any movies or shows that you watched this week?
Yes. The Hulu documentary on WeWork. And Hulu's been like sneakily putting out some really good documentaries. Like, I know Netflix is got all this press and stuff about some of theirs, but like the Tiger Woods one was really good. And this one was exceptional. It's only an hour and 40 minutes. So it's not a huge time commitment, but I only knew of WeWork as like the idea. Like, I heard people talk about it. It was, like this company that was making big moves and stuff. And then it kind of like, I heard a little bit about it collapsing. But it's very interesting to kind of go behind the scenes of this rise and fall of this company and really about these individuals that are kind of the figureheads of it, and how things kind of got away from him. Kind of reminded me a little bit of the Fire Festival, but like if the Fire Festival worked for like a long time and then suddenly failed. Okay. But because they were a very successful company. And then they kind of, were victims of that own success or expectations. So very good, very well done. You can sit down and get through it really quick. Also, my new show for the stationary bike in the little workout room downstairs. When it is raining, I go downstairs and try to ride that, because I don't like riding outside in the rain, because I don't like getting wet. Is this new series a relaunch or reimagining of the old David Carradine series Kung Fu, which has been updated. It's on the CW and been updated, so it is now set in the present day. Follows a young Chinese American woman kind of dealing with using her martial arts skills, but also like helping her community. And I really enjoyed the first episode. The second one is on right now as we're recording this. So either later tonight, if I feel the bug, or on Thursday, tomorrow, I will go and sit down at the bike and watch the episode and just pedal the entire time and try to burn some pizza off. So highly recommend that one as well. It's been really good so far. It's brand new. So it just only been out only started a week ago. So you can easily catch up.
Okay. I'll have to look into that.
And when I say CW, some people are like, oh, is it like super teen dramedy, like over the top, like that style? And it's been way more grounded. So I'm excited about that.
Okay. Only thing I really new thing is fell Falcon and Winter Soldier, just keeping up with that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it. All right. So
did you see that there is an 1 hour and 4 minute loop of Baron Zemo dancing available on YouTube?
oh no.
Yeah. So evidently the internet had a hashtag growing called Release the Zemo Cut, because Daniel Bruhl, the actor, let it be known that they had actually recorded a much longer scene of him dancing, and most of it got left on the cutting room floor. So Marvel, being as brilliant as they are, they must have had this ready to go, or some like editor had just put it together for like an internal joke or something. But they've got this super cut of all these dance moves that Zemo does, and they looped it for an hour long. So you can go to YouTube and put in like the Baron Zemo dancing, and it's from Marvel Entertainment, their official channel, and just have it on in the background, and it's Baron Zemo just busted a move. So I'm sure we will be seeing, once dance clubs reopen across the world, the Zemo dance is going to be, it's going to be a craze.
Yeah, that's going to be the move. All right. So, well, you get to go first this week. Have you ever thought to yourself, man, I sure would like to make a podcast. I've got so much to say about blank. Well, if you haven't heard about Anchor, you really should. It is the easiest way to make a podcast, and it's absolutely free. All right, I'm going to tell you why it's so easy. Okay, so with Anchor, there's creation tools that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many others. And you can even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Trust me, I'm so excited about this. You can be too. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started.
So as we talked about last week, the A-side has been very focused on movies and the excitement of getting back to the movie theater and things being released. Due to a series of work-related things, I wasn't able to get to the movie theater last weekend to see Godzilla vs. Kong, so I'm hoping to do that this week. But now my schedule is getting even more packed with a brand new movie that is coming out April 23rd. So we are recording this on the 14th. So I've got like 9 days. So I should be able to catch Kong versus Godzilla or Godzilla versus Kong this weekend. And then next weekend, either in the theaters or on HBO Max, I plan on watching the relaunch of Mortal Kombat.
I didn't even realize they were doing that.
Oh, yeah. And it's coming out. It was supposed to come out, pre-COVID, when all the release dates, were set. It was supposed to come out in January of 2021. So it's been done for a while. Luckily, it was completely filmed before COVID hit, and a lot of, there's a lot of special effects, understandably. So it's been in post-production. They pushed it back a little bit, and now it's going to be coming out here in the next 9 days. And as I dove into it thinking, okay, is this going to be a continuation of the two movies that I saw in the mid 90s? Is this going to, most importantly, is Christopher Lambert going to play Raiden again? Because, Highlander's the best. Or is this going to be a complete reboot? Complete reboot. And if you go into it, this is actually the third movie from that original contract. So way back in the early 90s, when Mortal Kombat was making its huge cultural impact, and we'll get into just how big that impact was in a little bit, they signed a 3-movie deal with a studio, and they did the first one, which came out in 1995. The second one, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, came out in 1997. The first one did very well. So well that they were like, awesome, we're going to get that second one out as quick as possible. Second one didn't do as well, and basically kind of killed the franchise for a little bit, but they still had this contract for a third movie. So they talked about rebooting it in the early 2000s. There was a plan to even film in New Orleans around the time of the Katrina hurricane, which pushed that back. And then there was another writer in the early 2010 when they were trying to relaunch it. Finally, they got it filmed here in 2019 for this release here in 2021. As I'm looking back, I remember how huge Mortal Kombat was when it came out, pretty much for a specific reason, and that was because it had blood. And this sounds crazy, but in 1992, no video games were showing blood. And in fact, the biggest one-on-one fighter game at the time, the arcade console game where you'd go to Chuck E. Cheese, or up here in Minnesota, we had this knockoff Chuck E. Cheese called Circus Pizza, and they even had their own animatronic animals, and one was like this giant bear who played like a cigar box banjo.
Oh my God, that sounds like Showbiz. That sounds exactly like Showbiz Pizza.
Maybe Showbiz was like the regional thing, but it was circus evidently was just a Minnesota thing. But yeah, this animatronic thing was probably nationwide. It was endearing, but also like strangely creepy. And it also looked like these guys were homeless because they were like in an alleyway, and one of them lived in a trash can, but it wasn't Oscar. It was like a bird thing. There's a lot of the therapy that probably was inspired by that. But if you went there, you get the pizza for a birthday party, and then you go play the games. And then one of the biggest fighting games at the time was Street Fighter, and then Street Fighter 2. And all of a sudden, Mortal Kombat
wasn't
came
Street
along.
Fighter Brothers?
That was Double Dragon.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But Double Dragon was a side scroller, moving from left to right, classic. Street Fighter was all the different, Bear, what was his name? In the movie was Jean-Claude Van Damme. Raul Julia took the role because he needed a big paycheck because he was dying of cancer at the time, and just needed another paycheck so he could save money for his family. Turned in an amazing performance in just a really horrible movie. Ming Na Wen, who was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and was the voice in Mulan, was Chung Li in that way back in the 90s. So Street Fighter movie, not good. Don't go watch it unless you like Jean-Claude Van Damme or Raul Julia. So go watch it. But Mortal Kombat came along and completely changed the game. Literally, pun intended. Cartoon fighting had been around forever. Cartoon characters in video games were the norm. Everyone was used to seeing, Mario ring around in his pixelated form, and Street Fighter was very cartoonish violence. Mortal Kombat used real sort of motion capture that they filmed actors doing all the moves and then digitized them, but they looked way more human than the Street Fighter. It certainly wasn't a cartoon. It was sort of the advent of motion capture. They were digitized film, basically. They digitized the characters after they had filmed them. It also had blood when it came to fatalities. And fatalities were this entirely new move within the one-on-one fighting game arena, where if you had got your opponent to almost their bar of health, almost all the way down to the end, you could do a special move that would finish them off. And these were gruesome. Finish him, or come get over here. I mean, some of the great lines that come from Mortal Kombat. Something like ripping somebody's heart out, or or decapitating someone but pulling the whole spine out of their body, or taking your own face off and blowing flames at the other person. This was mind-blowing. And at the time, I was an 11, 12-year-old kid. I was not allowed to have video games. So the only time we got to play video games were when I went to friends' houses, or when I was at Circus Pizza or some arcade at the mall. This blew me away. My parents actually told me I was not allowed to play Mortal Kombat or fighting games or shooting games. So I only had sports games and Star Wars games, which there was shooting in Star Wars games, but it was Star Wars, so it was okay. I only had sports games on my computer. So I told my parents that I was just playing sports games when I would go over to my friends' houses, but we were always trying to play more gruesome games. So Mortal Kombat was the most gruesome, and it blew everything out of the water in terms of playground time. So when I was in grade school, when we went outside for recess, sometimes we played football, basketball, sports. Sometimes we played in the playground. But probably 40% of the time, we were talking about the movie that somebody had seen, or a story that they had heard, or something they learned from an older sibling, and standing there and trying to impart the knowledge that we had gained to our friends. I remember one of my best friends, Matt Johnson, would get to see movies because he had an older brother that I hadn't gotten to see yet. So then I would make him tell me the entire plot line and his favorite scenes and his favorite lines from the movie on the playground. When everyone else is like, oh, let's play something. Like, no, Matt's telling me the story. So he would verbally explain the entire plot line to something like Dick Tracy or Predator or Alien or the Briscoe County Jr. episode that I had just missed. And I lived this entire experience through oral storytelling, like I was sitting around the campfire in Cro-Magnon days. I remember us talking about the different fatalities from Mortal Kombat and how you had to, it was almost like a treasure hunt because you couldn't just do them automatically. You had to have the right series of buttons and movements to get the fatality to work. And once you figured it out, you had this special power to do this stuff. And so people would be crowding around you, whether you were playing on the Sega or you were in the arcade, trying to figure, once the one guy figured out how to do it, then we all wanted to watch that one guy do it. In fact, I remember we'd be playing and we'd get to the finisher move, and whoever didn't know how to do the finisher would give the controller to the guy who had the power to do the finishing move because we all wanted to see it. It made such a cultural impact and was part of a lot of different games at the time, but it was one of the main ones that ended up starting a congressional hearing on video games. So in, let's see, I'm getting the date right here. In 1993, Joe Lieberman and I'm trying to think the other senator that were involved are Herb Kohl. So Joe Lieberman of Connecticut and Herb Kohl of Wisconsin, who used to own the Milwaukee Bucks, led a hearings on video game violence and the corruption of society. And these began in 1992. 2 games were specifically cited in the hearings for their content. The fighting game Mortal Kombat, which featured realistic digitized sprites of live action actors, blood, and the ability to use violent fatality moves to defeat opponents. Without the blood and gore and fatalities that came from Mortal Kombat, we wouldn't have what has come to be known as the Entertainment Software Rating Board, or the company or the board, the agency, the group that decides all ratings for video games. So up until 1994, there was no rating on any video game. It was kind of up to the companies that made the video games and the consoles to decide what they would do in terms of how they would market things. So without the blood and gore of Mortal Kombat, we would never have gotten what turned into the Entertainment Software Rating Board, which is the group that decides how you classify various video games. Before that, up until 1994, there was no, like we think of in movies where you got G movies, PG, PG-13, R, that sort of thing. There was no rating system for video games before that. So Mortal Kombat and its groundbreaking graphics and gameplay changed the entire industry. And the government had these hearings. Things went really bad in the court of public opinion for video games. I even remember my parents talking about it, and it just reinforced the fact that they were never going to let me get a console. Yet I could still use computer video games, which is a incongruency that I never wanted to point out when I was younger, because I was like, I'm going to let this work because I don't understand how one is okay and one isn't, but I'm going to go with it. But I didn't get my first console until the day I graduated high school, and I used my money from my open house to buy a PlayStation video game console because I was out of high school and I was finally allowed to do it. And I did it very much right away. And now I have 6. So abstinence-only education doesn't work.
6 different consoles.
Yeah, connected right now to my 3 TVs, which are set up in my living room.
All right.
I'm a little bit addicted to the screens, and that addiction has only grown over the last year of isolation. So hopefully we're not going to go back to saying screen time is bad anytime soon, because that's not going to go good for me. Not going to go well for me, I should say. But the ESRB came up with the ratings that we see today, and that we've got the E for everyone, the E for 10 plus, which actually was a new one they developed in 2005. The most common that you see probably is the T for teen, and then of course mature, which is mature 17. And then there's also technically, and much like movies where there is an NC-17 rating, but no movies ever get NC-17 ratings because no studio wants to get that because no movie theater would show them, or no big movie theater would show them. There is an adults only 18 plus rating for video games as well, but no console wants that video game on their platform. So hardly like any games ever get created with that level of rating. These ratings have been around since 1994 and have pretty much been consistent with the rare edition that they had in 2005 with the E with a 10 plus, which kind of mirrors how the movie ratings board, or the MPAA, I think, if I remember the initials correctly, added the PG rating after they had originally come up with stuff to kind of have that halfway line between PG and R. According to the internet, PG-13 is allowed to have one swear word. So often you will see memes or message board posts.
Let's clarify. PG-13, they can say certain swear words, but they're only allowed one F-bomb.
Okay, there it is. Okay, I knew there was some. I wasn't even sure if it was real because I've only seen it on like Reddit and Instagram and Twitter and stuff, where somebody will be like, this movie, like say, some Star Wars movie or Harry Potter was PG-13. So they get one use of the F word. Where would you put it? And those are always really fun threads because everybody's trying to figure out where they would put it in that specific movie, which makes sense. So Mortal Kombat was pretty much the reason that we had to have the Entertainment Software Rating Board, or the ESRB. But then again, this comes back to a question of chicken or the egg. We have Mortal Kombat, which then the response was the ratings and the rating system. But now that there's a rating system, haven't we had many more games that fall into that mature category? Because now the consoles and game creators can say, well, it's allowed, it's just going to be in this category. So we'll make games like Grand Theft Auto, or we'll build in little things in Call of Duty or Halo that push the boundaries where they wouldn't have tried that before without the ratings, because they're like, hey, we're going to be a mature rating anyway, so now we can really flesh out what that means. So it is an interesting thought experiment of whether or not the ratings board actually resulted in more questionable video games being produced, but now they're done so with a stamp of approval because they can come with a different rating. In fact, Nintendo was one of the consoles that when Mortal Kombat came out the first time, Nintendo's version didn't have, or it came where it didn't have the blood and the gore. You had to turn that on. And having played it without the blood, it wasn't as good as Street Fighter, because Street Fighter is was at the time a better user experience for the gameplay. The thing that Mortal Kombat did was the story in the background, and it had the blood. Sega, of course, had the blood, and Sega and Nintendo at the time were really going after each other. That was kind of Sega's heyday with the Sega Genesis. After that, now they're just a company that makes games. They don't even have their own consoles anymore. This is for kids. This is way before Sony or Microsoft had even entered into the console area. So don't worry about them yet. But Nintendo and Sega bumped heads. Sega actually came up with its own code before anybody else, and then tried to shoehorn their code into the entire industry. And Nintendo agreed that there needed to be a code, but absolutely refused to use Sega's code. So they had to change all the graphics and the ratings names because Nintendo wouldn't have something that Sega created on their properties. So even though Sega had already done all the work, they just had to change everything because Nintendo wouldn't let Sega be the one that created everything. So a nice little
that's what you
moment
call
of
a petty level epic.
Oh yeah, and even more so when you dive into it. So I mentioned the Street Fighter movie that came out in 1995, and Jean-Claude Van Damme plays the main character. There is another layer of that pettiness where Jean-Claude Van Damme was actually the inspiration for the entire Mortal Kombat game system. They were originally going to do a fighting game based off of Jean-Claude Van Damme, and in fact, Johnny Cage, who is a movie actor who is a martial artist in the original Mortal Kombat, is completely based off of Jean-Claude Van Damme. So Street Fighter then got to use Jean-Claude Van Damme in the movie, and they didn't, and Mortal Kombat didn't when they went to have their movie version. So taking that pettiness to a whole new level. So without Mortal Kombat, we may not have the ratings. Without Mortal Kombat prompting the ratings board to create these ratings, we may not have had this entire explosion in games that are more for adults. When you look at how games were made in 1992, 1993, before Mortal Kombat came along, the target audience was children. If you look at the place that video games have gone to now, the target audience is more often than not and 18 plus. You'll get some, high school kids as well, but it's 18 to 35 in that key target demo. And some of these video games that are being released make way more money than even movies being released in the theater. They have become huge cultural moments. I mean, I remember there was back in Madden has kind of fallen off in the last few years. It hasn't been the cultural moment that it was probably 5, 6, maybe even 10 years ago. But I remember there was a time when the day Madden came out, companies would have to prepare for people calling out sick the next day. Mm-hmm. Because some people would buy the game and they would take off the day, or they would call out sick and they would play all day long and all weekend long. And games usually came out on Wednesday, so you could lose workers for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday because they were playing the brand new game. That is not something that you would see even with movies. You might lose somebody for one evening, but you're not going to lose them for a whole weekend because of a brand new game. And that's where we've gone. So without the domino of Mortal Kombat deciding to make realistic, looking characters, digitized sprites as they call them, or taking motion capture and then digitizing those people, adding blood and gore, and that first domino falling, we may not have the entire mega monolith video game industry that we have today. So when you go to see the new Mortal Kombat, the relaunch that is coming out on April 23rd, you now have an entire historical context and appreciation for the cultural impact of that game, and somebody saying, "Get over here.
Finish him!"
Or finish him. Yeah. And evidently, and they found the guy that first yelled that. A few years ago, I was reading it. Somebody, like some radio station, found it when Mortal Kombat X came out, which was probably 6, 7, 8 years ago now. As a mobile game, I got it on my phone because one of my coworkers, Annie, was saying, "Have you played this game yet?" And I was like, "What? Mortal Kombat?" I was like, "Yeah, you just play it forever." Goes, "Well, there's a new one," and I played it on my phone. It was even good as a mobile game. But somebody found the guy who did the finish him. Or the Mortal Kombat, that line, and he was able to still do it over the phone. Some radio station called him and had him do it over the phone, and still sounded pretty darn good. So
nice.
It's pretty epic and a cultural moment that without we may not have a lot.
All right. So there you go.
And that's the A side.
That's the A side. Well, I can't say that my side is about martial arts, but there is plenty of blood.
Yeah, I figured like the ties that bind this week is the gore.
Yeah, there's plenty of that. So this week, we're gonna get back to the men. We're gonna get back to the male serial killers. So this week we're going to talk about Harvey Miguel Robinson. Harvey is one of the youngest serial killers in American history.
Oh boy.
Harvey was born December 6th, 1974 in Allentown, Pennsylvania, which means this is not that long ago. So if he's...
Harvey and I aren't that much apart in age, so a little concerning.
Right. So if he's born in 74, his crimes are pretty recent. So sadly, Harvey, his life starts, it seems to be pretty typical for the path that, he's headed on. Harvey's father, Harvey Rodriguez Robinson, was an abusive alcoholic who not only physically, but also emotionally abused Harvey's mother. Harvey's father eventually left the family, and his parents were divorced by the time that Harvey was 3. The senior Harvey ended up going to prison for manslaughter after beating his mistress to death. So he's got a pretty good role model there.
Yeah.
Somebody just set in the way.
Probably good that he wasn't around for a long time.
Yeah. It's said that Junior Harvey, even though his father was an alcoholic and abusive, he idolized his father. This is not boding well.
That's not what you want to hear.
So in school, Junior Harvey, was a really good student, and he showed strong academic and athletic potential. Harvey won awards for his essays and was an extreme competitor, not only in wrestling, but soccer, football, and various cross-country events as well.
Dang.
So Harvey was a very talented student. I mean, like I said, athletic and academically. But while he showed this academic promise, he also displayed a tendency toward the dark side pretty early on. Around 9 years old, that's when we saw his kind of switch flipped, maybe you could say. It was determined by school counselors that Harvey suffered from a severe conduct disorder. He went from a child throwing massive temper tantrums to an adolescent with a quick temper and a real cloudy moral compass. So it seemed that Harvey, who had this really rocky start and not such good examples, really had a hard time deciphering right from wrong. Harvey also, even though he idolized his father, who was an authority figure, he despised authority and he loved the power of being feared by others. Isn't that a line in The Godfather? Something about fear?
Yeah, it's not a good statement. He loved the being feared by others. And that's not something you hear about nice people very often.
Right. So between the ages of 9 and 17, Harvey built up quite the impressive rap sheet. Arrest for burglary, resisting arrest. He was also known as a drug user, which could contribute to his aggressive behavior. It's unknown to anyone but Harvey why he began to escalate from burglary, but what is known is he upgraded in August of 1992 at the age of 17. There's usually a trigger, but nobody really knows that trigger. On August 5th of 1992, Harvey broke into the home of Joan Burkhart, a 29-year-old nurse's aide who lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment in a residential area of Allentown, Pennsylvania. It seems that at the time, he took $40 and he left. That's the way it would seem. But 4 days later, on August 9th, Joan's neighbor called the police to complain that Joan's stereo had been on for days and no one would answer the door. The neighbor also reported that Joan's screen had been cut and that she had heard her screaming and banging on the wall several days earlier. I don't understand why it took you 4 days to call, Gladys Kravitz, the nosy neighbor.
Man, I mean, they just really hated the stereo. Like maybe the stereo just stopped playing songs they liked.
You hear this is what I don't understand. You hear someone scream. You hear someone bang on the wall. Even if you don't call the police in that moment, then, several hours go on and you hear a stereo and they won't answer the door. You don't think to call?
Yeah. And it make a lot of sense.
So police arrive And they arrived to check on Joan, and unfortunately, they found her on her living room floor. According to the autopsy, Joan had been beaten, raped, and hit on the head 37 times. Her skull had been fractured, and it caused damage to her brain. On the scene, there were a pair of shorts. Police found semen stains indicating that Harvey had either used them after assaulting her to wipe himself, or he masturbated and used them to clean up. Unbeknownst to the police, Harvey, of course, we know the end outcome. Harvey was the killer, but he was actually arrested on a separate charge of burglary and spent 8 months in prison. So he's got his first murder under his belt, and now he's in prison for 8 months. And of course, what does he want to do when he gets out?
Number 2?
Yeah. Murder, not number 2.
Oh, yeah. Not number 2, number 2. Murder 2.
So once he got out, he picked up right where he left off. On the morning of June 9th of 1993, a customer of the Morning Call newspaper called police when her paper hadn't been delivered by its normal time. Now, I know you're thinking, what a Karen, she called the police. No, there's a reason. This is a valid reason to call. Her delivery person was 15-year-old Charlotte Schmoyer. And Charlotte was one of these really responsible, well-mannered teenagers. She was always punctual. So it was really unlike her to be late. So this caused the neighbor to worry. Or excuse me, the customer. So the customer looks up and down the street and she sees no sign of Charlotte. But what she did see was Charlotte's cart that she used to deliver her newspapers parked outside of a house. So she checks back 30 minutes later. It's still there, still unattended in front of the neighbor's house. The 15-year-old was nowhere to be found. Charlotte was a student at Dynuff High School, and now we know she's missing. When police arrived, they find the cart half full, and Charlotte's headset was on the ground between houses. Police also found finger streaks on the window pane of a nearby garage, and they concluded someone has taken Charlotte. So a tip comes in and leads investigators to a wooded area close by. And when they search this area, they find blood, a shoe, and sadly, the body of 15-year-old Charlotte Schmoyer, who had been buried under a stack of logs. Charlotte's autopsy revealed that she had been stabbed 22 times, and unfortunately, her throat had been cut. Fortunately, in this horrific situation, if you can say that, investigators were able to collect samples of blood, hair, different types of hair, if you know what I'm saying. And the samples did not match Charlotte. So they found hair, from the head and the genital region, and they were not Charlotte's hair. So Harvey's luck seems to maybe be coming to an end. He's pulled over for speeding. But, well, they let him off with just a ticket, leaving him free to commit more atrocities. On June 20th, just 11 days later, Harvey enters a home intending to attack the woman of the house, but found her asleep next to her boyfriend. So instead, he's not going to give up his plan. He's going to leave and do some damage, right? He doesn't attack the woman. Instead, he attacks and sexually assaults her 5-year-old daughter. This sweet baby girl survives, but based off of her injuries, that was not Harvey's intention. Days before the attack on the 5-year-old, Harvey had broken into the house of John and Denise Samcali. Harvey stole John's gun collection and he drank their whiskey. He's just in the house chilling like, oh, guns and whiskey. Was he in Texas? Sorry, Texas, but you know it's true. On June 28th, Harvey returned to the Sam Kelly house in the middle of the night through an open window to kill Denise while John was out of town. You see, he'd been watching the house and he knew that John was out of town. Denise tried to escape and she was actually able to get outside, but Harvey grabbed her and the two battled it out. She fought hard. Denise bit Harvey in the arm while he repeatedly punched Denise in the face. He cut her lip open. He raped her. He tried to strangle her to death. This entire time, Denise is screaming. And fortunately, this time, a neighbor does respond when they hear screams. They hear Denise scream. They turn their porch light on. And it scares Harvey and causes him to flee. When police arrive, Denise is alive, but she's been beaten terribly. And the struggle is, I mean, it's all over her, obviously. Mm-hmm. They searched the premises, of course, not finding Harvey, but what they did find is a butcher knife that had been wrapped in a napkin lying outside of her bathroom door. On July 14th of 1993, Harvey broke into the home of 47-year-old Jessica Fortney's daughter and son-in-law. Jessica was found, unfortunately, half naked on the floor in the living room, her face swollen and black and bloody. There was blood splatter on the walls. Jessica Fortney's autopsy revealed that she, too, had been beaten, raped, and stabbed. Strangulation, in this case, was her cause of death. What Harvey did not realize when he broke into Jessica Fortney's daughter's house and killed Jessica Fortney was that Jessica's granddaughter witnessed the entire attack and was able to give police a description. Well, one thing you can say about Harvey is when he sets a goal, he's going to try to finish it. You see, 4 days later, Harvey went back to the Sam Kelly home, the home of Denise and John. He attempted to break in again this time, but now the home had an alarm system. Around 4 a.m., Denise heard a noise and the back door opened. It sets off the alarm. This, of course, frightens Harvey. He flees. So now it's pretty obvious to everyone he's not going to stop. He's obsessed. So police set up a sting and they use, of course, Denise as bait because, well, I'm sure part of this for him is she can ID him.
Right.
So, right. So Officer Brian Lewis was sent to the home to do a stakeout. And as everybody predicted, Harvey returned again to the Sam Kelly home on July 31st around 1:25 a.m. Officer Lewis heard the noises and watched as Harvey broke into the house through a window, which had intentionally been left open. Once Harvey was inside, Officer Lewis identified himself to Harvey and he told him to stop. Harvey, not going to stop. Instead, he responds by firing shots at Officer Lewis. Officer Lewis fires back. Harvey was hit and then he fled the scene. Police find a trail of blood leading from the kitchen to the back door, and immediately they notify all the hospitals. A few hours later, the police are called by a hospital and informed that Harvey has shown up to receive treatment for a gunshot wound. Further examination of Harvey found fresh scrapes on his arm and legs, typical of being cut by glass, and a bite mark that was several days old on his inner arm. When police arrived, Officer Lewis was able to identify Harvey as the suspect. Harvey surrendered and was arrested on charges of kidnapping, burglary, rape, attempted murder, and murder. So now, armed with DNA, eyewitness accounts, physical evidence found in the homes of his victims, investigators built a massively solid case against Harvey Miguel Robinson. He was found guilty for the rape and murder of 15-year-old Charlotte Schmoyer, 29-year-old Joan Burghardt, and 47-year-old Jessica Jean Fortney. He was sentenced to a combined 97 years in prison and sentenced to 3 death sentences. Harvey and his attorneys were able to get 2 of the 3 executions commuted to life sentences. 1 death sentence remained. As of April of 2006, his execution had been stayed while in as of April of 2006, his execution has been stayed. While in prison, Harvey is converted to Islam. And in October of 2009, a Pennsylvania judge urged Harvey to consider donating his brain to science, calling it, quote, the one gift you could give. Which, I mean, I get what he's saying, because it would allow researchers to study the mind, the brain of a serial killer, to see what is there. There's got to be some weird different connection, something in there.
Yeah, is it something like CTE or long-term brain damage that makes them act differently, or what's going on? Right.
While he has never admitted to it, Harvey is suspected in the attempted murder of a young woman named Leslie Gerhardt, which was committed 5 years before the murder of Joan Burghardt. An intruder removed the screen from the bedroom window and entered the house where Leslie was staying with a friend. The intruder began to beat Leslie with a brick, but ran when her friend started to scream. You see, Leslie and Harvey attended the same elementary school, and he is suspected of stalking her via telephone and in person in the weeks prior to the attack. So that would have been about 91.
Yeah. So what is he, 15?
No, he would have been like 12, because he started at 17.
Oh, yeah. Good
yeah.
grief.
Yeah. Harvey's crime spree was depicted in the 1996 film No One Could Protect Her, starring Joanna Kearns, the mom from Growing Pains, as Denise Samcali. Part of Harvey's crime spree has also been told in the investigation discovery series Your Worst Nightmare. He was also depicted on A&E's Killer Kids and Criminal Minds season 11 episode titled Pariahville. Harvey is not directly named, but he is the apparent inspiration for the episode's unsub, Matt Franks. Both were, okay, now this is a term we've never used on this episode before. Ephemophilic serial killers and stalkers who were young when they committed their first crimes. They targeted women. They killed their victims in their homes by stabbing them. And they stalked their victims to know when it was the best time of day to kill them in their daily schedules. Officer Lewis, who encountered and shot Harvey, shares the same surname as the character Tara Lewis, who killed Franks by shooting him in the neck. Now, as I just said, we have never used this term on this show, ephemophilic or ephebophile. An ephebophile is a person who is primarily attracted to late or post-adolescents, generally between the ages of 15 and 19.
Wow, that's a very specific thing.
Yeah. There seems to be terms for everything.
Yeah.
But there you go. That is the story of one of America's youngest serial killers. And fortunately, he was caught pretty much almost as soon as he started. I mean,
yeah,
not quite.
Bad enough what he did, but
right.
At least it wasn't something that went on for years.
Exactly. It wasn't a Ted Bundy or an Ed Gein. Whew. Sam Little.
And I mean, the audacity to get 3 death sentences. I mean, that's just, they're like, we're gonna, do they like zap him 3 times, or how does that work?
But I think the reason they do that, because I've seen in situations where they won't even pursue charges because it's like, what's the point? They've already got a death sentence. But in this case, look, he already got 2 of them overturned.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So
Might
I
as
think
well
it's
put
more
as
of,
many.
yeah, I think it's more like an insurance policy. Like, oh, look, we want you to die. So we're going to hit you with as many death sentences as possible.
Yeah.
But
You can't appeal them all.
yeah, right. But as of when I last checked when I did the research for this episode, Harvey is still alive. His execution has still been stayed. And I'm sure in the midst of this pandemic, he's not going anywhere.
Yeah. You just take his mask away maybe and let nature do its thing.
But like this dude, like he went back like you didn't. Okay. They got an alarm, dude. They got an alarm. So they knew that you were going to come back. You come back again. You don't think they're like, all right, look, we got to up our game.
No, he was like, I'm just going to keep, like he was committed. He was committed to finishing the job.
That's determination. That is one thing he had for sure.
Motivated crazy.
Shoo. I will say that all of our sources, both Adam's and mine, will be on our website. All the sources for both of our stories are on our website, which is A-Side, B-Side podcast.square.site. While you're there checking out the sources and the stories, you can also check out some merch.
Yes, please.
T-shirts, sweatshirts. I've got on a sweatshirt right now because it's kind of chilly. Puzzles, blankets. Maybe we should do some pet gear. We got coffee mugs.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. It would be great to get like a little thing for the pup.
Yeah.
We both got dogs.
That's true. I think Benny would really like a Bad Vibes Saves Lives t-shirt.
Yeah. T-shirts as opposed to scarves. Lorelai didn't do scarves. She's not a bandana person. Or she's not a person, Adam. She's a dog.
You can support the show several ways. Of course, you can head on over to Apple and give us a rating or review. We would greatly appreciate that. You can also tell your friends about us and get them to listen in. You can also buy us a coffee. It's buymeacoffee.com/A-Side B-Side pod. If you have a crime that you would like us to talk about, or a movie, or maybe that guy from that whatever, and you're like, oh man, Adam would be great at this, let us know. Our email is A-Side B-Side podcasts with an S @gmail.com. And I don't know, is there anything else?
No, that's good to go.
Yeah. Of course, we will have our eye on the news. Not going to get back into that. Just we will have our eye on the news.
Yep.
And of course, if you've not seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier, you really, really need to, because this last episode was intense. And can I just say the audacity of Wyatt Russell to ask to wear the uniform that Chris Evans wore? You didn't earn that, dude. You do not get that. What? You didn't even know about the character much at all. And then you had the gall, the unmitigated gall to say, but can I wear his costume? No.
He has done a great job in that character. But unfortunately, being the internet, he's also started to receive death threats for his portrayal. So
seriously,
that's not, yeah.
Whoa.
People are like, the internet, shocking. Some people on the internet are having trouble disassociating the actor and the character he's playing. So hopefully people can get a rein on that and realize it's just his job, guys.
I guess that means he's doing a really good job, because he really is.
Yeah,
you know, I give him his props. He's doing an excellent job portraying John Walker. Like he's really good at this character. But you are no Steve Rogers.
Yeah. So some people, he's received death threats, and also I've read that the director says there is and they did this to us in WandaVision 2, where somebody mentioned, like Paul Bettany said that there's an actor in this that he's always wanted to work with, and that was just the scene where he plays himself twice.
Oh yeah.
But the director mentioned a cameo that happens in the 5th episode, which comes out on Friday. So that's another thing to watch for. It's supposed to be a big one. So if you haven't jumped in yet, get caught up, because that one's supposed to have a big moment.
Do you think we might see Steve Rogers?
Well, the way they said it is it's a character that Marvel fans will know, that's very grounded and would be interesting to see on the interacting with somebody on the level of like Thor, but isn't in any upcoming movie.
Well, again, that could be Steve Rogers, because we know
it could.
He has retired.
This is true. And we don't know which reality he's in when we see him dancing at the end of Endgame, though.
Exactly. So, it would be interesting. Although I will say, unless they did some digital stuff, Chris Evans has not shaved his beard. So it would all depend on when they film this too.
Yeah. And this was filmed, this was supposed to come out before WandaVision.
Right.
But they've had to do some edits because evidently there was a subplot involving a viral disease at one of the camps that the Flag Smashers are helping people at, and they felt like that was too close to reality, and so they cut that plot line out. So that's why it actually came out after WandaVision.
Okay, yeah, I remember I read that it was all filmed before the pandemic. It was just the editing, and that's what has kind of been the tricky part, the editing while everybody is having to work remotely.
Yeah. And it's been kind of it's amazing that there are so many people that watch every single second of this and can dissect it, but I saw one account, I don't know if it was Nerdist or Everything Awesome or one of the others that do all the recaps, but somebody broke down scenes where you could tell that it was a cutaway and they had a voiceover to explain something.
Oh wow.
Where they changed a line. And that was just wow, you have to be really, really on point to notice.
Really. Can I just say another side note about this show is, can we just talk about how stunning Florence Kasumba is? She is beautiful. She plays Ayo.
Oh yeah. Well, I love the and I always say the name incorrectly. The order, Dora Milaje. I love the moment where they're like, "You don't have jurisdiction here," and she's like, "The Dora Milaje have jurisdiction anywhere the Dora Milaje are." I was like, "Okay,
yeah,
you do."
Was it Dora Milaje?
Dora Milaje. Yeah.
I think that's it. Yeah, but
you were closer. I think I was referencing a Nickelodeon character.
But yes, she is beautiful and she's just striking. And man, she is one of the understated actors of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because she appears in 4 films?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's kind of silly that no one, I never thought of it, but obviously Wakanda would have a part in this because of their connection to both Zemo and Bucky. So I mean, I don't remember anybody talking about how they were going to be a part of this. And I guess there is the outside chance, and this would be super Marvel, that I don't know how long ago they recorded this stuff, but maybe the cameo of somebody that's not going to be in the future movies is Chadwick.
Oh, that's a very good point. Now that you say that,
I have no idea, and we're recording this on Wednesday, so when you guys are listening to this on Friday, I haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah,
but I mean, that would blow people away. That I'm I have goosebumps right now.
Oh, that would be so good. I think I would cry.
And if they kept that under wraps, I mean, that would be huge. I mean, it's so good anyway. But
that's the thing about Marvel is they are good about keeping things as long as Tom Holland's not involved, or Mark Ruffalo. If they're not involved, because they've both been known to spoil things. But they were incredibly good at not spoiling the end of Avengers Endgame.
Yeah. I mean, anything is on the table, but if that happened, even if it's just like a quick cameo or something, like where there's a scene where he's in for just a split second, I think that would just kind of blow people away. The problem is now we've built it up so much, it's going to be somebody else, and we're all going to be like, "Oh,
I know." Okay. I'm like, that darn Adam. He got my hopes up.
Yeah, I'm saying it could be anybody. So I'll say it.
All right, so there you go. That is another episode of A Side B Side Podcast. Again, just a reminder: sources on our website. A Side B Side Podcast.square.site. Again, we have social media. We've got Facebook, we've got Instagram, we've got Twitter. If you would like to send us a story, we'd absolutely love it. I do love to research, so you should see my little notebook with all my notes and stories and things that I have for the upcoming week. So go ahead. And Adam, of course, if it comes to connecting that guy from that show, he's all about it. So let us know.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Once again, thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Brooke.
This is Kevin Armstrong, your host for Movie Battle. Each episode, we take two films and put a superfan of each against one another to decide which one is best. The only rule we have is that you come correct. If you're interested in being a guest on Movie Battle, please check us out on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.
As always, thank you for listening to A Side B Side Podcast. If you enjoy the show, please, if you don't mind, head on over to Apple and leave us a rating or a review. And if you'd like to continue to support the podcast, you can do so by heading on over to Patreon, or you can buy us a coffee, as well as buying merch on our website, asidebsidepodcast.square.site. From Adam and I at A Side B Side Podcast, please remember to wear your mask, social distance if you're around people that don't live in your household, and just be safe and happy. Thanks again from us here at A Side B Side Podcast.